a life of entrepreneurial freedom with insights from successful creatives, entrepreneurs, and investors. Discover how they overcame challenges and turned their biggest dreams into reality. They share their personal success playbook so you can build the business and life you truly want. Welcome to Passion Millionaire, the podcast by Robert Roth. Rock and roll your dreams.
Welcome to today's episode of the Passion Millionaire podcast with somebody who is known from TV. He has spoken on Fox TV, NBC, ABC, CBC, and other channels, has spoken on big stages, corporate stages, has worked with Fortune 500 companies. He has 30 plus years of experience helping companies close deals. And he is a very specific experience or expertise combining AI and finding leads on LinkedIn. So I'm super excited to learn from Kushner today. What's the best way to transform your professional brand on LinkedIn and make more leads happen and do that in a way that is very authentic and very personal. So excited to have you on, Kushner. Welcome.
Thank you, Robert. Looking forward to being on the program.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I'm excited to have you reintroduce yourself real quick. Just let us know, add on to what I've said so far. Please also feel free to correct. Let us know who you are. And then we dive into all the details.
Well, you've got to mention my book, The AI LinkedIn Advantage, which is my latest book out there. Talks about how to use AI technology with your LinkedIn profile to optimize and hopefully dominate the competition. That's really what it's all about. So yeah, glad to share some insights and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, exciting. Let's dig right into that. Like, what made you feel like you have to write that book, and what is it, if you would have to hop right to the core of it, like, what is it somebody will get out of it, especially also freelancers or, startup entrepreneurs or companies who are making somewhere between 1-10 million, what could they learn from it?
Well, the simple truth is that AI technology is sort of a breakthrough, I think, when it comes to using LinkedIn because it'll help you to optimize your profile, help look for keywords, help to create content, and content is king on LinkedIn. So you really, if you want to be a thought leader, you provide content, and that's exactly what AI can help you with to use it as a way to gain trust and gain authority. So that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I'm curious. I mean, obviously everybody knows, okay, there's ChatGPT and it's possible to create content with ChatGPT. But now what makes really high quality content? What is the difference between somebody who just, pulls up ChatGPT and there you go, there is content, and the content that you would create on the highest level?
Well, again, ChatGPT is just one of many AI technologies available. And I wouldn't rely on just one technology. I would use a multiple of technologies because that's really important because every AI technology has its own specialty. So when it comes to uh, providing value to whoever you're connecting with the content you're creating should be authentic and not just replicated, let's say, by using ChatGPT, because sometimes people just are lazy and they just post it. And it's surprising that they realize that, the quality is not what they are expecting. A lot of times it could be even hallucinations for the most part when they're
Mhm.
posting, and they realize it's too late that they posted it, and they say, "Oops," and that really ruins your credibility right there. You have to be original and authentic. You can use ChatGPT for perhaps an ideas you want to look at, perhaps an outline, but don't use it as an end all because you'll find it to be a lot of shortcomings with that. So it's technology is there, but it's not perfect. So you really need to look at it more closely before you use these tools. So it comes across as being authentic.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I mean, everybody who is using LinkedIn professionally knows there is a lot of content out there that feels kind of, how to say that, mushy, or it's like it's there, but it doesn't really hit something that is super on point and differentiating from everybody else in the same niche. So how would you actually fix that problem so that whatever software you're using, I'd be curious to learn about that as well, but so that the content that you're creating is on point, is authentic, and doesn't hallucinate? How would you fix that?
Well, the fact is that you want to look at what you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to create a newsletter? Are you creating a script for a video?
Mhm.
And then, if you are, you want to come up with ideas that will resonate with your, listeners, your people who are subscribing to your newsletter. You got to offer value. You got to touch on pain points that are concerns for them, and that's where you can reach out to AI technology to come up with ideas for articles, ideas for scripts for newsletters, to really present in a way that it comes across as, I would say, value to whoever you're connecting with. Not just producing articles for the sake of it because what you think is important may be different. What the your readers are different from their point of view.
Mhm.
So always try to provide information that's going to resonate well. That's going to touch on pain points that will help. Perhaps you can provide a solution for those issues that are concerns for your readers.
Mhm. So basically, you need to have a profile of who is your reader and understand exactly what do they need to read, to see, so that they dig in and get value from it. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yep.
and you want to be, selective on the connections you're going to be approaching, because a lot of people want to reach out to you, but they not be your target audience. So you
Mhm.
really want to perhaps ask them to follow you instead of actually connecting, because that's going to make a difference in terms of your connecting with the right people. Because you only have a certain amount of connections that you can do. I think it's 30,000 is the limit.
Mhm.
You're quite surprised how fast you can get to that limit by accepting everyone,
Yeah.
to connect with you. However, but if you, change your profile, indicate instead of, ask to connect, but to follow, well, guess what? You can have unlimited amount of followers. And I think that's the approach that you should do on your profile, is to make sure you change that to followers. And
Mhm.
those who want to connect with you, you can evaluate whether or not they are worthwhile, of you connecting. Because being selective is going to make a difference, especially when you decide to do outreach. You can connect with someone who's going to be of value. That's a key issue right there. Is it's quality over quantity.
Mhm. Yeah, makes total sense. And then now, let's say you have achieved this step together with a client or somebody who just listened to that, takes that advice, and then switches the profile and then narrows down the niche, narrows down basically the readers, the audience, right? But you were using AI in some way. So how would you make sure that if you're producing content through AI, whatever types of tools, how would you produce that in a very efficient, effective way so that it's not hallucinating and that the content is really on point for that audience?
Well, again, I give you an example. Like, I have a number of newsletters that I use. They
Hmm.
send out each week. I have about 5 different newsletters. My
Hmm.
target audience is usually referral partners. So I have accountants, I have attorneys, I have financial planners, I have insurance agents, I have event planners. The information that I provide to these individuals are very specific for their particular marketplace. So what I send to a CPA would be different than send to an attorney. So I would use various forms of AI technology. And to be honest with you, I don't use ChatGPT for that
Okay.
purpose. I use Perplexity, for example. I
Hmm.
use Google has their own excellent one, Gemini, I believe.
Hmm.
And
Right.
there's another one that's also great, Jasper. These are all excellent tools, and I use a combination of these tools to come up with ideas for topics that are touching on the pain points of my newsletter subscribers. Because again, each week they look forward to reading something that's going to help them achieve results, better results on LinkedIn. And that's why I help by reaching these technologies to see what ideas that they can come up with that is ideal for my target audience. But I even
Hmm.
go a step beyond that too, and I create AI agents okay,
Hmm.
that help me. And they are basically created in a way that has a certain purpose. One agent would be focusing on newsletter content, another one would be focusing on outreach strategies. And I basically created a team of advisors on AI that help me to make my decisions on the strategy I take each week and how to focus in on what best to reach my audience, what resonates well. And it's surprisingly effective.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that's interesting as well. Um, the AI agents, I'd like to dive into that as well, but I'm still curious. I mean, now you have explained that you use AI, those different tools, to generate ideas that are very specific for this target audience. Now, I assume that you're not only generating the ideas, but probably the articles, the content itself. Is that so? And if yes, like how would that look like until you have the finished article that is ready to post and high quality?
Well, again, once I select a topic, then I would use AI technology to get research on the latest trends and updates on that particular subject itself. And then once I've got that information, I create a Word document and then I use services like Grammarly, which helps to create sentence structure and help with editing to make it look polished. And then I add my own insight of what worked for me into the article, and then produce in a way that it comes across as being authentic. It's you use it as a tool, to do the research, to do the grunt work, all right, and then use services like Grammarly to help polish it and make it look professional, and
Hmm.
then post it. That will resonate well with your viewers. That's really how it works, and you'll
Hmm.
find that is a strategy that works well because it is original in a sense that it's coming up with ideas that are really touching on people's pain points. And that's really what makes a difference of getting people to respond. And I see the difference because of AI technology is helping me do the research to find out what is concerns for my readers.
Yeah, interesting. And I have two detailed questions about that. Like, how would you pick the right idea or the one that sparks the most interest? And also, is there still some manual work in there before you have the finished article? And what would that be?
Well, I would select a particular target audience. And again, it could be, for example, on my podcast, that I drop 4 times a week. I would talk about certain techniques. For example, I would look at on Tuesdays, I do tools and tips and tricks on tools on AI and
Mhm.
talk about the latest, technology that a lot of people are looking into, and I use AI to help find out, what are the companies offering and what changes are happening in the industry that are affecting my listeners. And it really is about choosing which topics, and it gives me an endless amount of topics to work with. And once I select one topic, I'll expand upon it by using some of my insight that I know and my experience in dealing with certain technologies and, share that information in the podcast. And usually my podcasts are less than 10 minutes on the average
Mhm.
because I like to keep it short and sweet. And I find it to be very effective that way because people don't really have time to sit a half an hour or more to a podcast. They want to give them the meat, and that's what I do. I give them the key highlights. And then if they want more, they can subscribe to my newsletter, and that's something that gives more in depth information. So there's a lot of possibilities that you can work with. I also use AI to help create scripts to use for videos, and I find it to be very effective. I post in groups. I'm a member of over a dozen different groups on LinkedIn, and I find that strategy works very effectively because a lot of the group members are, and could be in the thousands or hundreds of thousands,
Mhm.
are very interested in learning about AI technology and what things that can help them be better in their profession. So they're always interested, and AI does help in creating ideas for that kind of content.
Mhm. And So the manual work is basically the distribution work, or when you create the content itself, is there any manual work involved as well still? Or is it fully automated?
No, there's always manual work, but I have a team of VAs that I work with that help to come up with the ideas. They use the AI technology, and then they pretty much give me, suggestions on what to work with. Plus, I have a team of my AI advisors that I also run it by as well. And they also give me ways to help become more impactful with the information I present. And then what I do is I take the information, I rewrite it in a way that it comes across as being authentic, and then I publish it, and I find what kind of response I get from it. Some days they can hit a home run, other days, crickets. But that's the kind of the name and nature of the beast. You don't know where it really works. But for the most part, I think most people get value from what I present because the information is timely, it's informative, and it's something that a lot of them are pain points for them to address. So I try to give them information that is relevant, and the response that I get from that knows that I'm in the right direction. So that's the key.
Hmm. Okay. And when you're working with a client, so how would that usually look like? Like, what is their initial situation? They come to you, they have a problem, they need more leads, they need more to grow their following, potentially also on LinkedIn. Can you describe their typical case when they come to you? And also, I'd be curious, when you work with them, what is the transformation that happens? So maybe you have a case study in mind that you could just, yeah, give us a little bit of a story. What is possible when somebody is working with you? Like, basically, what is the results then also that come out of working with you?
Well, I have numerous studies to look at, but I think for the most part, we kind of go back to the basics and talk about, optimizing their profile. We take a look and see exactly what their profile and how it compares to their competitors. Because they're in a competitive situation and they need to understand that if their profile doesn't look good, if not better than the competitors, then they have a problem. And that could be because the fact is people are using LinkedIn nowadays for searches. And if they're going to events, most of the time they expect that they would have a profile that is robust and informative and that's really the difference. They think that it's not necessary that they have to have a LinkedIn profile, but that's wrong. And that's really what they'll see. And they're wondering they're not getting the business because the fact that they're losing the business to the competition who has, optimized their profile, who've used strategies that help for outreach. And that's going to make a difference. And that's what I help with clients is just, if you want to be found, if you want to have a profile that you can be proud about, then I could show you the ways that work for me and has given me the ability to become a thought leader in my industry. And that's exactly what I present to them. If they want to become a thought leader, I can show them the right way to become that by using some of the strategies that help me uh, be a thought leader on LinkedIn.
Hmm. And can you give us one of those case studies also? Like, you have worked with a client, and what was the transformation that happened, like before and after? Like, maybe there's also some numbers that could be picked out, like whatever amounts of followers that have been gained, revenue that has been gained, and maybe within a time frame. Or I just love to have something tangible as well. Would be curious.
Well, I'm not sure we have enough time in this podcast to go into details on the case studies, but I do have a lot of them on my website as well as information. But I would say, just to summarize, is that the fact is that people who've worked with me have seen results by having their profile optimized. They're able to actually get more business as a result because they are coming across as a thought leader by creating content for newsletters, by creating articles, by helping to even create a way to have case studies, which I do have on my website of successful clients who were really thrilled with the results. The end result is that um, you have to look at it that if you're not doing something, especially with AI, to improve your profile, then you're at a loss because your competitors are out there are doing that, and you can simply look at that and see the results. One of the key factors I look at profiles, for example, with your profile. All right, look at the recommendations that you have. It's very limited. Okay, you really need to step up your game and get recommendations because third-party endorsements are crucial to success on LinkedIn, and that's something that I try to stress as long. Anyone who's worked with you should at least say some kind words and got to be proactive in doing it, and that's going to make a difference of you gaining trust on the platform because there's a lot of profiles on there that are really you can't really trust them for the most part because you look at it and it's what they say is different than what it shows. That's really what it is. And that's really what I try to stress. Well, so in addition to recommendations, I look at the groups that they joined, look at articles they've written. And if there's areas of improvement, we focus in on that. And I find that, not having a newsletter right off the bat is a no-no. They got to get started with that regardless and get subscribers. And then once they see, and be very specific with your niche newsletters. You can do up to 5 different newsletters on LinkedIn, okay, which is
Hmm.
why I do. I have one for newsletters for attorneys, one for accountants, one for financial planners, and they go specifically every week and they reach it. And it's great about the newsletters because they have such an incredible reach.
Hmm.
Not only do they get notified on LinkedIn, but they also get notified in their email inboxes outside of
Hmm.
LinkedIn because LinkedIn has such a high authority. It bypasses a lot of spam filters. Just think about it. You send out a newsletter through your corporate newsletter, guaranteed it's going to get into the spam filter. But with LinkedIn, not necessarily the case. And that's an underutilized tool that people should really see a difference. And you can work with AI technology to come up with ideas for these newsletters, and they don't have to be extensive. It could be 500, 700 words on the average. But, once a week is a minimum that you should be posting on there. And you can start seeing a lot of traction and a lot of results by just using that technique. And also, it's great for Google searches too, because there are things in the newsletter that you can use to actually enhance outside of LinkedIn.
Hmm.
LinkedIn allows you to create a actual URL for that particular article that you created and help create the keywords and the metadata, which you can use AI technology for. So actually, when you do post on LinkedIn, that search can be found on Google. And just think
Hmm.
about the opportunity that you have. Imagine your article could be the top of the list on Google searches, you know,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden you're getting a lot more reach beyond LinkedIn's walls, so that's incredible. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize that this tool, this newsletter is an incredible free tool to use. And not taking advantage of it is just, it's criminal, I would say.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, actually. I really believe that's an underused tool. That's also my impression. I'd be curious. Would you say there is best ways to grow those newsletters quickly? Let's say somebody now just heard of this opportunity for the first time, has no newsletter going on LinkedIn right now, but wants to start it. So let's say you start it and how to grow it fast to, let's say, the first 1,000.
Well, you got to take a look at your existing followers. I mean, it depends on how many people that you have currently connected with. If you're just starting on LinkedIn, you may not have anybody to read your newsletter, of course. But as soon as you do create it, LinkedIn will notify your particular followers and ask them if they'd like to subscribe. And that's
Hmm.
something that they'll get it usually automatically in the first newsletter, I believe, that's created. So there's your opportunity. And then you want to do with your newsletter, don't be a generalist, be specific. You can actually use AI technology to help ideas for a newsletter, what would be resonating well with your clients. So, and that's really what you can focus in on. And then start with the first newsletter.
Hmm.
And then once you find some traction with that, you can develop a second one and a third one and so on. And once you reach 5, then that's great. You have that and send it out at least once a week. I mean, there's no excuse not to do it. And you can schedule this in advance, which is
Hmm.
great. So what I do is on the weekend is when I do my scheduling in advance. And a lot of times I'll schedule a month out, because, you can do that with LinkedIn, which is great. So it's not
Hmm.
like, you're short for, ideas for articles. You always have a month lead time or even beyond that. But I find that to be an effective strategy. I find it to help build credibility and gain trust of the people that you're connecting with by having a newsletter. It's definitely going to make a difference in your outreach.
Yeah, I can see that. I'd still be curious. Let's say somebody has a couple thousand connections on LinkedIn, started a newsletter. Okay, then LinkedIn informs automatically all the followers, if I understood that correctly. And
Yeah.
then let's say you add more connections over time. Is that happening automatically as well? Or is there something that needs to be done manually? Do you need to invite them to the newsletter in order to grow it? Or what are the best practices there in order to continue to grow it?
Well, I would say that once you release your newsletter, and you can use hashtags in there to release it, to help get the attention of those who are not followers of yours or who are not connected with you to be notified of this particular newsletter, as well as certain tools in the newsletter itself, the settings that you can go beyond LinkedIn itself to Google searches. And
Hmm.
if your particular article resonates with someone who's doing a Google search, they may be on LinkedIn's network and they may decide to, I don't know, rejoin LinkedIn because they haven't thought about it, and it's
Hmm.
and it'd be as a result of your newsletter. So you can use that as beyond the reach of LinkedIn's walls. So there's no, I would say that the opportunity is incredible in terms of the reach itself. It's a free tool, and if you use it the right way, you can grow your followers in leaps and bounds. I mean, it's incredible because of the reach that the newsletter has. If you can structure a way, again, come up with a title that's going to catch people's interest. That's most important. And guess what? You can use AI technology for that. AI come up with a catchy title that's going to grab people's attention, focus on the pain points, and then it'll develop a hashtag for that and a promo for the article itself that can help you develop that. And as well as most importantly is the Google, the URL and the meta tags that are designed for, Google searches. So this
Hmm.
combination is going to be a very effective tool for using it. And in addition to that, you can look at when you create a newsletter, you have an option to create a static image for the newsletter itself, or you can do a video. And video is a very powerful tool. You can do a video up to 60 seconds, to introduce the idea that's presented in the newsletter. And you'll find a lot of eyeballs on that because of you created a video with your image of yourself. And that's really a powerful newsletter tool that is also a secret weapon in getting more followers and more interest in your in what you offer.
Hmm. Okay, very interesting. And like, if you would have to have a step by step process, let's say you have somehow grown your newsletter to the first 500, like what would be the next steps ideally that you could take in order to double that size? I understand that it will be visible also on Google, etc., and you have to craft the title to spark interest and all of that. But is there, like, I'm looking for something tangible, like for example, would you go ahead and write DMs to everybody, hey, check out this newsletter, or would you post that on your profile, or is there, like, what would be the best practice in order to make that growth happen?
Well, as I mentioned, the key to growth on the newsletter itself, of course, organically, is to have a compelling title for your
Hmm.
newsletter, and also have a video, a short video
Hmm.
that will highlight what the article or the newsletter is about.
Hmm.
And you'll find that to be a very effective tool to gain interest because a lot of people are not really using for that purpose. Are you here, Robert?
Yep, yep. Here you go.
It's not seeing you. So I find that kind of strategy is very effective. In addition, you can also create polls on LinkedIn, which
Hmm.
also are very effective in asking questions of people about their pain points. And you can do this at least once or twice a month. Also is a right way to gain some traction. And there's another tool that also is very effective. It's called carousels. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, personally, I have to admit I have not used them yet, but okay, I'm curious to learn more about that, how that would help to gain
Well,
traction.
what's great about carousels is that it actually is favored highly on LinkedIn's algorithm, because the fact is that it's kind of like a series of PDFs that usually 5 or 7 slides on the average that
Hmm.
really goes beyond just a simple post on LinkedIn. It's you can create a general idea of the post, but people spend time on that particular post because of the PDF
Okay.
because it's like a series of slides that they have to go through in order to complete the information in the post. And that
Hmm.
seems to resonate well because that's what LinkedIn wants, more eyeballs on a particular article. So, or at least on a post. So carousels, and you can actually create that with Canva. They even have a lot of templates on that you can use for carousels that are really impressive and makes it very easy. And I've been using that, I would say the past month or so, and I've seen amazing results because of the posts that I normally used to use just a text post, and then I've used video post. But all of a sudden, carousels, because LinkedIn is like, promoting it, they want to get more people to do it. Well, they really give an incredible reach once you post that. So that's
Yeah.
also another tool that could be very effective.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. All right. Then I'm curious if you have like one tip only to leave the audience with, and also leave us with today. Is there a number one thing out of your experience when growing LinkedIn accounts that gain not only followers but also clients, especially, that is often missed, but if you start doing it, would be a total game changer?
Well, it's very simple. It's just optimizing your profile. You simply have to focus in on getting most recent headshot, have a background image that represents who you are. Look for keywords that are optimized. Have a description of the services, any recommendations. You have to really use the ability to optimize your profile, because if you do any outreach or any connections, you only got a few seconds to make an impression. If they're not impressed, they're not going to give you the time of day. And that's simply put. So you can't do any outreach at all until you optimize the profile. And what I created was actually a worksheet, a profile optimization worksheet that your listeners can have access to absolutely free. Go
Oh,
to
that was great.
linkvantage.com/audit, and they have access to this tool that will help give you great tips on how to optimize your profile, how to look presentable, how to look trustworthy, whoever you're connecting with. That's really what it's all about. And if you can do that, if you use some of these insights I created, you'll find that you'll have a lot more people interested in connecting with you. And whenever you do
Mhm.
outreach, you'll get a lot more acceptance than you would have if you didn't do it at all.
Mhm. So that was linkvantage.com/audit.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, exciting. We're going to also put that link down there in the description of this podcast. I'm really thankful. I'm happy that you joined our quick interview today, Al.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for that. And if there's a best way also to reach out to you personally, I assume that's going to be your LinkedIn profile. Also, feel free to just mention that real quick, whatever the best way is.
Yeah, well, go to LinkedIn. Certainly you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can
Yeah.
also check out my book. It's called The AI LinkedIn Advantage. It's also available on Spotify if you prefer audio versions, which is a great
Mhm.
option. And also check out my podcast called The AI Authority Edge. It drops 4 times a week, available on Spotify as well as Apple.
Mhm. Yeah, exciting. Again, thanks so much, Al. See you
Welcome.
soon. Yes.
We'll be in touch. Have a good one.
Go to rockandrollyourdreams.com/podcast.